flow.
Welcome to episode 56 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. If you're a new listener and you enjoy the show, it would be a big time help if you give us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you enjoy the content, we would appreciate it so much if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. All right, everybody. As of Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, the Toronto Maple Leafs are third in the Atlantic Division standings. The Boston Bruins are technically tied with them in points, so the Leafs could drop into a wild card spot pretty soon, or maybe they go on a run and make a charge for first in the division. But on this episode, we are talking NHL trade deadline. Since our last podcast, the Leafs played 3 games. They beat the Dallas Stars, the Carolina Hurricanes, and lost to the Predators. But then they picked up Mark Giordano and Colin Blackwell at the trade deadline. So we're going to get into the Leafs trade deadline, Atlantic Division trade deadline, winners and losers from across the NHL. You want to stay tuned to the very end. I promise you, this is going to be a good one. But now it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, thank you for the introduction. Happy day after NHL trade deadline day. Say that 10 times fast. Episode 56. Shout out goes to Christians Rubens, Latvian-born Maple Leafs player, 3 career games with the Maple Leafs, 0 goals, 0 assists for 0 points. And I believe he's a -2 career for the blue and white. So just to prove that the number 56 hasn't exactly been historic in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club.
Yeah, not the best defenseman the Leafs have ever had. Hey, still a young guy. So who knows? He's
big. He's big. 6'5", 230, I think it is. I mean,
really big, has a big stick, long reach.
Yeah.
A lot of Marty Marinson vibes.
What was the Berkey quote? Not tenacity, truculence.
There you go. A lot of truculence.
That was the word.
All right, Lepore. Let's get right into this.
Yeah.
Leafs trade deadline moves. Just to go over it for whoever hasn't seen the moves, who's been living under a rock over the last 24 to 48 hours. The Toronto Maple Leafs picked up defenseman Mark Giordano and forward Colin Blackwell from the Seattle Kraken for 2 second-round picks and a third-round pick. We will also get into the Travis Dermott deal. The Leafs shipped him off to the Vancouver Canucks for a third-round pick. But first, Lepore, give me your thoughts on this deal with the Kraken to acquire Giordano and Blackwell.
Okay. Well, it's not very often that the Toronto Maple Leafs have put smiles on our faces during our careers as Leafs fans. But I will say I had a smile on my face after seeing this deal. And I'll tell you why, everybody. If you look at the totality of this deal, did the Toronto Maple Leafs get better? The answer is yes. They added Mark Giordano and they added Blackwell, who provides some offensive depth. Okay. Now let's look at the actual trade. Did they give up a first-round pick? No. Did they give away a prospect? No. Did they give away anything from their lineup? No. This is an A+ deal. The biggest Leaf hater in the world has to admit this is an A+ deal. They got what they wanted. They didn't overpay. And again, importantly, nothing came out of their lineup. Today, the Toronto Maple Leafs are significantly better than they were yesterday, and they didn't give up very much to do it.
I love the deal, Lepore. I couldn't agree more with you. To me, the biggest thing is how this is going to stabilize the entire blue line, because Giordano immediately comes in and is a top 3 defenseman on this team.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to look at the depth chart, okay, Morgan Riley's obviously the number 1 D. Then you have TJ Brody and Mark Giordano. You could even argue Giordano's the second best defenseman on this team now. Now, I love TJ Brody, and obviously there's the connection with Giordano and Brody going back to Calgary, and it looks like they're probably going to play together. We'll find out pretty soon once he practices with the Leafs for the first time. But this dude's going to come in. He's going to play over 20 minutes a night. He can play in all situations. Even at the age of 38, he's still a very good all-around player. And what it's going to do is bump down the Justin Halls of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even who knows what's happening with Jake Muzzin when he should be back soon, let's say. Jake Muzzin is not the same guy he used to be. So now Jake Muzzin becomes the fourth best defenseman on your team instead of the third best defenseman on your team. And all those other guys, whether it's Rasmus Sandin, and obviously they got rid of Travis Dermott, Timothy Liljegren, go down the list. All of these guys, because of Giordano coming into the mix now, are going to be playing less minutes and aren't going to be relied upon as much. And I think that's huge. And Colin Blackwell, listen, I don't know a hell of a lot about Colin Blackwell. It's not like I've studied tape of him and followed his entire career, but, you know, digging into him a little bit, he's a really solid depth forward. He actually has some decent point totals considering he doesn't really play that much. 17 points in 39 games this season with the Kraken, 22 points in 47 games with the Rangers last season. And like you said, man, they didn't give up a first round pick in the deal, didn't give up one of their top prospects. So agreed. I think it's a fantastic deal for the Leafs.
As far as Blackwell goes, he's a good guy to have for a team that wants to go on a run because he's sort of like a Swiss Army knife. He's a little feisty. He hits, he plays wing. He can play center, which is great if you face an injury. He was the pick from the Rangers, if I'm not mistaken, right, in the Seattle expansion draft. So, I mean, it goes to show something that of all that was available from the Rangers, the Seattle Kraken decided to pick him. But happy about it, man. Happy. And not to get into this whole discussion, the Giordano from Toronto thing. It's good to see. I mentioned before about a smile getting on your face. People who have been Leafs fans long enough remember a time where the take was that kids from the GTA didn't want to play in Toronto, that veterans didn't want to sign in Toronto. The only guys the Leafs seemed to get were guys who were like washed up the end of their career to kind of like sail into the sunset to say they played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But it makes it feel good, man, because if we're being perfectly honest with ourselves, there are a lot of things we can list that come with playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs that may not be ideal for a lot of people. The pressure, it's a big market, and some people can see these things as good things at the same time, but the fact of the matter is not everyone does. Pressure, big market, there's media to the end of the world that's going to shit on you after every mistake. You go 3 games without a goal, people are dumping on you. And like, now this has come out. Recent criticism of William Nylander is the perfect example. Oh, we got to trade this guy in the offseason. On pace for 30 goals, and I think it's 77 points. What player in their mid-20s is putting up a season like that and people are calling for a trade? Only in Toronto. So just to touch on the point of negative things you can pull out of playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, playing in that city, to see now guys wanting to play in Toronto for the hometown Leafs, it makes it feel kind of warm and fuzzy. It really does. And you look at this lineup: Wayne Simmons, Jason Spezza, Michael Bunting, Mitch Marner, now Giordano. I'm sure I'm forgetting others, but there is a list of guys who are from the GTA and want to and are happy to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So it's good signs. It's good signs. At the end of the day, the GTA produces, I think, more NHL talent than any other area of the world. So why not have guys want to play for their hometown team? But the thing is with the Leafs too, now I'm going to get kind of like dreamland. When I envision the Leafs finally doing it, and when I say doing it, I mean winning the whole thing, there's always that thing in my head about the story that will be told about it. Whether it was, the kid from Toronto who was drafted from the Leafs scoring the winning goal, or the goalie that stands on his head to get them there. I like the Giordano thing for that reason. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying I think the Leafs are 100% going to win the Stanley Cup as they picked up Mark Giordano, who's from Toronto. It's just, it's a nice thing to tie into the whole deal. And let's face it, man, teams rally behind things. Whether it's sometimes our teams rally behind negative things, but in this case, it's positive. You have this guy who's far past like even the back nine of his career, looking to win a cup in his hometown, and he came to Toronto. It's good news, man. It's awesome. Very happy about it. And I'll say it already. I don't know what discussions have been had, but is there maybe the potential for a Simmons or Spezza style contract a la cheap for next year? I mean, I don't think anyone would be upset at that if the Leafs decided to go that way. If they could get Giordano for like between $1 and $2 million to be a depth defenseman, right?
Yeah, at this point in his career, he's coming off a deal where he's making $6.75 million a year. So this dude just made a ton of money on his last contract. He obviously won a Norris Trophy. He's one of the best D-men in the league. And it's not like he's totally fallen off a cliff by any means. Like I said, he's still a very good player. He's not the Mark Giordano from 3, 4, or 5 years ago. But like I said, I'm extremely confident he will immediately slot in as a top 3 defenseman on this team and play 20 to 22 minutes a night. And if the Leafs are able to bring him back on a hometown discount, which is certainly possible, because you look at Jason Spezza, he is clearly worth more, and maybe not this season, last season especially, clearly worth more than $750,000 a year, just in terms of the production that he was putting up. So maybe Mark Giordano says, you know what? I like it here. He's from Toronto. He wanted to be traded to the Leafs. I'm glad you brought that up, Lepore. Like, he wanted to come here. A lot of people don't want to come here. So Seattle did what they could to facilitate this deal, and maybe that gave the Leafs a little bit more leverage, and maybe that helped them avoid giving up a first-round pick in this deal. But, you know, it's fantastic to see that he wanted to actually come home and play for the Leafs. And like you said, I actually think there's a really good chance that they re-sign him on a cheap contract, because it's not like Giordano's going to go out and command like $5 to $6 million a year. The guy's 38 years old, right? So I think there's a very real possibility they bring him back on a nice short-term deal.
Yeah, Giordano 55, man. That's a nice looking jersey, and he can rock it. When's the next gen game coming up where the Leafs, they're wearing, so to everyone's surprise, they're wearing a black jersey. It's black with blue trim. Some of the Leafs yesterday were rocking in practice, but yeah. And even with the deal too, man, it's a set, if I'm not mistaken, it's a second this year, a second next year, and the third is the year after that. It's like you barely feel it, man. Like honestly, I can't believe this deal. I really and truly can't believe it. And like you said, maybe because Toronto was the destination that Giordano wanted, Seattle didn't really have the power to pump up the price. But I mean, it worked out for us, so fuck it. I'm happy about it.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, Lepore. There's no way, even if you're a Leaf hater, there's no way you can look at this deal and say it's not a win for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's just a fantastic deal across the board, especially when you look at some of the other deals that were made across the NHL, specifically in the Atlantic Division, which we will get into. But before we do that, Lepore, it's time for a quick break for a word about MANSCAPED, the champions of below-the-waist grooming and our proud sponsors, who have done it again with the launch of the brand new Ultra Premium Collection. From trimming your hockey pucks to your everyday grooming and hygiene routine, MANSCAPED is here. After lighting the lamp, hit the showers with this all-in-one skin and hair care kit that covers you from head to toe. MANSCAPED is trust below the waist, and now it's time to trust them with the rest. Join the 4 million men worldwide who use MANSCAPED by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code GFP20. Lepore, these products are the best.
They are the best, Anthony Bruno. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are hockey players, and we all spend time in the locker room. Nobody wants to look like an ape, guys, in the locker room. So get that Lawnmower 4.0, take it to your body, finish it up with the shampoo and conditioner and the body wash so you look great and you smell great.
You said it, Lepore. You want to look good and feel good when you're playing hockey.
So you play good.
Very important. All right, everybody, get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code GFP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping using the promo code GFP20 at manscaped.com. Don't be a goon. Upgrade your hygiene routine with the Ultra Premium Collection from Manscaped. Thoughts on this Travis Dermott deal, even Travis Dermott's time with the Toronto Maple Leafs, because I thought he was going to be a full-time member of this D-Corps for years to come. And I think back to last year's playoffs, the giveaway that he made that led to the Jesperi Kotkaniemi goal. And
I got to do that, Bruno.
And as much as Leaf fans, I would say a lot of Leaf fans like Travis Dermott. He's a great guy. He's from Toronto. He's a good player. And it just didn't work out. And I still have that vision in my head of that giveaway against Montreal in the playoffs. And I just think about how he was erratic at times, made poor decisions. It just didn't quite work out, even though he was a pretty high draft pick. He wasn't a first round pick, but I believe he went like 32nd overall in the draft or 33rd overall.
Yeah, I knew he was a second or third round pick.
He was a very early second round pick. As I check real quick. Yeah, second round, 34th overall in 2015. So
nice.
Didn't quite work out, but what are your thoughts on Travis Dermott?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of bittersweet. Sweet in the way that it shows the depth that this team's been able to build defensively, that a guy like that can't even fit in the lineup. But bitter in the way that here was a guy that we drafted, developed, spent some time with the Marlies. And actually, you just reminded me, I have a Marlies Calder Cup Champions cap autographed by Travis Dermott. I pulled the trigger on that one when they won. So yeah, it just sucks to see a guy that you develop walk away, but he'll have an NHL career. He really will. Again, like you said, he skates well. He moves the puck. He's a likable guy, always smiling. I'm sure he's positive in the room. He'll have an NHL career. And I'm sure like Leafs fans usually throw a lot of crap when a Leafs player exits, but I don't think anyone has really anything negative to say about Travis Dermott. We can point to that giveaway, but there was never any drama with him. There's never any bullshit with him. Like you said, he wanted to play for Toronto. Actually, like a little side story, I played hockey with a guy who is good friends with Travis Dermott's father. And this guy I played hockey with actually went to the draft. And he said that Dermott made it very clear to the Leafs that he wanted them to draft him. So it just sums it all up, like how it was a great story, at least for the time being. And like I said, Leafs fans everywhere are hoping Dermott has a really good career.
Yeah, he was just the odd man out. It just got to a point where, he was getting healthy scratched. He wasn't a full-time member of the top six. He was kind of right on the bubble, the 6-7 guy. And the Leafs decided to get some assets back, giving up the assets that they did to acquire Mark Giordano and Colin Blackwell. They got a third-round pick back from the Canucks for Travis Dermott. So we wish Travis Dermott all the best, honestly. I think he's going to have a long career in the NHL. I don't think he's going to be a star player or anything like that, but I think he's a very solid defenseman, and I'm sure Canucks fans are going to like him, and I hope he does really well as a Vancouver Canuck.
Yeah, just to wrap the bow on the Leafs D, someone posted this the other day, or was it yesterday? Quite interesting. So when Kyle Dubas walked into the Toronto Maple Leafs, the D-Corps was Riley, Hainsey, Zaitsev, Gardner, Polak, Dermott. Okay. As it sits today, we have Giordano Brody, Riley Labushkin, Muzzin Sandin, Hall Liljegren.
It's definitely a lot better.
I want everyone to keep screaming that Kyle Dubas has no idea what the fuck he's doing and he should be fired. Like, that's a total flip around. That's a total 180. Strong D-Corps, man. I know it feels weird for everyone to hear that, but the Toronto Maple Leafs are pretty strong from 1 to 7. They really are.
Yeah, you could say that goaltending was still their biggest need But when you look at some of the goalies that were out there, I don't think it made any sense whatsoever to go get Marc-Andre Fleury, especially with the asset cost and how Jack Campbell still has a better save percentage than Marc-Andre Fleury this season. And Fleury is second last in the league, Lepore, in goals saved above expected this season.
I didn't know that. There you go.
Minus 17 and a half goals saved. I should say, well, yeah, minus 17 and a half goals saved above expected. So he's the second worst next to Philip Grubauer on the Seattle Kraken this year.
Wow.
This is according to Money Puck.
Jay Fresh posted his card, and he made the point to say in the first sentence that Fleury has had a very volatile career. And that is precisely what I was referring to when I was saying that I didn't want him touching the Toronto Maple Leafs, because our luck isn't good enough. Things go up and down. It would be on the down. He would have the worst month of his career playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, just because that's the way it would go. And that chance was not worth it, even beyond the cost it would have been in terms of picks or prospects or bodies or whatever. I just didn't want it. I legitimately just didn't want it. It would have been far too dramatic, far too many talking points, far too much pressure on him. I'm sleeping easy knowing Marc-Andre Fleury will not play for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, you could say it would have been an upgrade. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have disagreed with you, but how big of an upgrade would it actually have been, considering how poorly he's played this year? And then, like I mentioned with the asset cost, I don't think they should have got Fleury, and you could totally disagree with me. Comment down below and let us know your thoughts on that. But I think the Leafs addressed exactly what they needed to, exactly what they said they were going to address. They shored up the decor. And what else did you really want them to do? It's not like they needed to go out and pick up another top six forward. I guess they could have done that, but did it really make sense? Listen, right now, Lepore, the Leafs are third in the league in goals per game.
Yeah, with the number one power play. Yeah.
Florida's number one, Colorado's number two, and the Leafs are number three. And the Leafs have the best power play in the NHL. So for the people out there who think that they needed to go out and get another top six winger, would it really have made sense for them to unload a bunch of assets for, I don't know, like a Claude Giroux or somebody like that? Sure, it would have made them better, but did they really need to do that? Their areas of concern were obviously the decor and goaltending. So I don't know. Is there anything you think the Leafs should have done on top of what they did?
I would have liked the goalie prospect that we picked up from the KHL to actually end up with us. That would have been nice. Yeah, sort of. Yeah, they were debating over his first name, but some extra goalie depth would have been nice if you really look at our situation. And he played in the Olympics, but I don't know a whole lot about this guy. He's a vet. He's in his late 20s or he's even early 30s, I believe.
32.
Yeah, there you go. But do you want to talk about that rule for a second? Like I've been screaming forever that the waiver wire rules should be different with regard to goalies, because you have teams in these situations all the time where they have a prospect and a backup and they're in limbo because they don't know who to send up, who to call up, who to send down, because if the goalie has some pedigree, he's going to get claimed, and it fucks teams. And again, like with players, fine. Like you have 7 forwards, or 7 defensemen, you have 13 forwards. I get it. If a guy goes through waivers, the rule that he should be able to stay in the NHL if another team wants him. But goalies, there's one goalie in the net. So I've always thought the rule should be different with regard to goalies. And then in this specific case, Sateri picked the Leafs. Like, how is the Union not in on this one? Here's this guy, like, who knows if other teams scouted him and he decided on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, I'm sure he knew he was going to have to go through waivers, and the Leafs knew they could lose him, but it shouldn't be a thing. I don't understand. And I heard someone say the reason why this rule is in place, it's for cap purposes. It's so a team can't, say, have a goalie like that in Europe all year and then just get him at the deadline for pennies on the dollar as far as the cap goes, but then like rearrange that rule, like make it so it counts differently on the cap or something. I don't like it. And fuck, of course I'm bitter because it's a Toronto Maple Leafs player. See what Dubas said in his presser, that, and it's one of those things I always kind of thought, I get the Twitter alerts every day from Chris Johnston and Elliot Friedman saying, oh, so-and-so is on waivers today. And then they'll have another tweet that mentions who was claimed or not claimed. And typically nobody claimed. You get the list for today. And then as far as everyone went through yesterday, nobody claimed. And it always kind of was in my brain that it seems like Leafs players are the only ones ever getting claimed. I don't know if that was just like a mental bias thing, so I'm paying more attention. But then Dumas came out and said, I think it was in the last 3 or 4 years, twice as many Leafs players have been claimed off waivers than any other team in the league.
It's insane.
Yeah, make of that what you want. I don't know her reasoning, but I am going to say, like, there's an inkling to me that it's because, well, everyone's watching Toronto. Even that player who's in the bottom of the lineup, yeah, he's got something. Let's pick him up. Whereas other teams, oh, so-and-so, never heard of him. Well, like, I'll ask you, Bruno, if Sateri would have been picked up by Carolina, would Arizona?
No, honestly, I think there's a good chance that he probably wouldn't have been claimed.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Arizona's sitting there.
It's almost like when teams see the Leafs are targeting someone, whether it's from Europe or, I don't know, someone in the NCAA or something like that. They always go, oh, the Leafs are interested in that guy.
Yeah,
they must know something that we don't because of all the resources they have. And because they're the Leafs, they must know something that we missed. So we better jump on this opportunity if we can. That's kind of how it feels like to me when I see things like this happen, when I see all of these guys that the Leafs acquire get claimed on waivers. So it's kind of funny, actually.
Yeah. I wonder what the rule is. I'm sure it can't end up in the Leafs' favor or any team's favor that this would happen to. But I wonder what the rule is. Okay, so Sateri, let's say he didn't report to Arizona. So he's playing in the KHL. He gets called by the Leafs, goes to waivers, gets picked up by Arizona, and he doesn't report. I assume then the Arizona would have to, I don't know, can they like vanish his contract at that point if he doesn't report and they just got him through waivers and he's going to go back to Europe? I don't know. I just like to know the logistics.
I don't know the logistics behind that, but you brought up a great point. He picked the Leafs. He signed with the Leafs because he wanted to be a Leaf. And again, I don't want to get into the whole, this guy would have saved the Leafs goaltending. He's played 9 games in the NHL. I know he just won a gold medal for Finland and he has great KHL numbers, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and say this guy was going to come in and lead the Leafs throughout 4 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But he picked the Leafs, and now he has to go to this shitty Arizona Coyotes franchise, which I'm sure he wants nothing to do with, especially since he's not a young guy. This dude's 32 years old. Okay, he's been around for a while. And yeah, I don't know what the logistics are now because he must be thinking, really? I got to go to this shitty team? And they just signed Karel Vejmelka.
Yes.
So he's the guy, he's their goalie of the future, let's say, of the next 2 to 3 years. I think he signed like a 3-year deal. 3 years. So what the hell are they doing with Harry Sateri?
Yeah, I mean, and again, they're going to be playing at Arizona State. Just whatever.
Yeah, in front of 5,000 people. Just a complete joke.
NHL, whatever. Get it right. But
yeah, I mean, you guys can call us bitter Leaf fans all you want, but just a bizarre situation, this Harry Sateri situation. So Lepore, let's move on and talk about some other teams, specifically the Atlantic Division.
Okay.
So there's been an arms race essentially in the Eastern Conference and specifically in the Atlantic Division because all these playoff spots are locked down. Now, teams are still jockeying for position. Right now, Florida leads the Atlantic. The Lightning are in second. The Leafs are in third. Boston's in fourth, but they're tied in points with the Leafs. And then you look at the Metropolitan Division, that's set as well. You have Carolina, New York, Washington, and Pittsburgh. Those are the 8 playoff teams in the East. And all of these teams did something to improve, if I'm not mistaken. All 8 teams made a move. Looking at the Atlantic Division specifically, let's start with the Florida Panthers. Okay. So the big fish, obviously the best player acquired at the trade deadline was Claude Giroux. Okay. Pending unrestricted free agent, still a really good player. Dude just won MVP at the All-Star game. I know it doesn't mean a lot, but he's 34 years old and he still has a lot left in the tank. He's not the Claude Giroux from 5 years ago, but this guy's still a good player. And they gave up a 1st-round pick, 3rd-round pick, Owen Tippett, who they drafted 10th overall in 2017. So that entire package they gave up for a rental And then they also picked up Ben Chiarot from the Montreal Canadiens, which I thought was probably the worst deal of the entire trade deadline.
You had laughter in your voice there, Bruno, already.
Just a disaster. They traded a first-round pick, fourth-round pick, and prospect Tyler Smolanek for Ben Chiarot, who's also a rental. So just looking at the Florida Panthers first, what are your thoughts on these moves? Because the way that I look at it, they're the highest scoring team in the NHL. They're scoring over 4 goals a game. They're literally one of the best offenses of the last quarter century. And they picked up Claude Giroux, and it's going to help them score, I guess, some more goals. But does that really matter for this team? And now they just lost Aaron Ekblad, who's out with an injury. He's on LTIR. Ben Chiarot sure as hell isn't going to fill his shoes. So I don't know, man. What are your thoughts on what this Panthers team did?
It's exciting what they did because they emptied the cabinet to get better. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they don't, in the next 3 seasons now, after what they've done, they do not have a first round pick and they have 1 second round pick. So 1 pick in the next 2 rounds over the next 3 seasons. And there are people quick to point out that the NHL should put some rules in with regard to that. Like the NBA has rules that you can't just clear out the cabinet of draft picks to get better now. But I look at Florida's situation. And we can get into this later with other teams and where the Leafs fall here. But this is a year for Florida. And I don't mean this to sound condescending, but it's the Florida Panthers. Okay. It doesn't come very often that they have an opportunity like this. Heck, it doesn't come very often for many teams, let alone a very small team like the Florida Panthers. Okay. Things are gelling well. Guys they picked up are having great years like Bennett and Duclair. So I appreciate them going for it. I really do. It makes it more exciting for everyone watching, but this may come back and punch me in the face, but I don't see it. The Ben Chiarot deal was, to me, a total panic. It was that thing of, everyone's telling you what your problem is, and maybe you know what your problem is and you want to address it. And you just did that obvious thing that everyone thought you were going to do. And you went overboard trying to accomplish it. Jay Fresh. I love Jay Fresh on Twitter. Anyone not following him, you got to follow him. He posted some videos of Ben Chiarot during the Leaf series last year because he was shitting on Ben Chiarot and what was traded for him. And the take coming back the other way was, well, you got to watch what he did in the playoffs against Toronto. You have to watch that to really judge him. And that's what Florida's after. So Jay Fresh took the time to cut every play into one video that Ben Chiarot was involved in, whether it was in the offensive zone, the defensive zone, laying a hit. It was 30 or 40 minutes. 7 games of every play he was involved in. I kid you not. Every 3rd to 5th video was a mistake. Was him missing an assignment or not getting the puck out or getting beat. I'm not going to beat it on the bush here. And I've watched the guy live a lot, being from Ottawa. The Canadians are in town a lot. I go to quite a few games. I don't think he's very good. I think it's a compliment to call him average. And to see what they traded for him, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think it's that thing of doing the obvious move that everyone's telling you to do and not having the balls or the brains to be maybe a little creative. Because I'll put it this way. People can talk about a need and addressing a need. Any team in the NHL adds Ben Chiarot. Does it really make them better?
No.
What is he doing to your lineup? Like how you mentioned, okay, Giordano, and yeah, let's pump the Leafs. Giordano won a Norris Trophy a few years back. Giordano going into any lineup, not only do you add Giordano, you're pushing guys down the lineup, which betters your depth. Like Ben Chiarot, where would I ideally want to see Ben Chiarot on the Leafs? I don't know.
He's maybe a 5th or 6th defenseman on the Leafs.
I was going to say, I'm not pushing out Riley, Brody. You know what I mean? What are we talking about here?
You know what it is, Lepore? I think fans, especially Montreal Canadiens fans, because they came at me for this as well, for ripping the Chiarot deal. I released a video on TikTok and YouTube, and I couldn't believe that the Panthers gave up what they did for Ben Chiarot. I think they have these memories of him, whether it's pushing around Austin Matthews. And when it cuts to commercial break and you see like those slow-mo replays of like, whether it's a dude like laying a hit or yelling at the ref or chirping somebody. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, these Habs fans specifically think that Ben Chiarot was this integral part of their run to the Stanley Cup final. To piggyback off of what you said, how Jay Fresh posted those videos, just to go over his stats. Against the Leafs in that 7-game series with Chiarot on the ice, the Montreal Canadiens were outshot by 55 shots throughout the series and had a -3 goal differential.
So an average of what is that? 8 a game.
They were outshot 125-70 with Ben Chiarot on the ice against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then the entire playoffs, Lepore, the entire 22-game playoff run for the Habs, Ben Chiarot with him on the ice, the Habs were outshot by 81 shots and had a -10 goal differential.
Yeah.
Like this is a number 5 or 6 defenseman who shouldn't be playing more than 15 or 16 minutes a night.
And think about that deeper for a second, Bruno. That's not us taking a sample from the regular season. That's a playoff sample of a team that went all the way to the final. They were winning games. So he had numbers that poor while Montreal was winning games. Horrible, man. Horrible. That's a great stat, man.
Yeah. So, for the people who are claiming that, again, like he was this integral part of the Habs playoff run, wake up. Please just wake up and look at the numbers. Watch the guy play. I get it. He's a big dude. He's 6'3". He's 220. He's physical. He plays hard. That's all great. But I'm sorry, that dude is not going to be making a big impact on your team come playoff time. And especially now that team has lost Aaron Ekblad, they just lost their number 1 defenseman. Can you imagine the Leafs at this point putting Morgan Riley on LTIR? That would be a devastating blow to this team. So I am very interested to see how this Florida Panthers team comes out of this over the next month or however many games they have. There's 20 games left in the season, something around there. I'm very interested to see how this goes because they just lost their number 1 defenseman. They acquired Ben Chiarot, who, looking at the numbers, is going to actually make their D-core worse. And they have no one to fill Ekblad's shoes. They picked up another forward, even though they lead the league in goals per game. So, again, I think Florida's a really good team, but I don't think they totally addressed the area of need that would have made them a better team.
I'll ask you this, Bruno, like based on what I touched on before about how people seem to always claim Leafs players off waivers because they've just naturally seen a lot of them because they're on TV all the time and they're getting all this press. Could that have been the case here? Is Montreal, like Montreal as a team as an organization, did they benefit in this situation that everyone knows Ben Chiarot because Montreal is a popular team that we naturally know their D-core. Had Ben Chiarot played for the Nashville Predators and a similar deal was made, would Nashville have gotten the same return as Montreal based on just the exposure and loudness he gets out of playing for the Montreal Canadiens?
You absolutely nailed it, Lepore. If that Habs team had lost in the first round to the Leafs, there is no way in hell people are viewing Ben Chiarot the way that they view him, and there's no way in hell he's being traded at the deadline for a first, a fourth, and a prospect. There's absolutely no way. That run to the Cup final worked wonders for the image of Ben Chiarot. Because if the Habs go out in the first round in 5 games, 6 games, even if they lose in that game 7, there's no chance people are looking at Ben Chiarot like they look at him right now.
It's weird, man. It's weird. But like I said, like even organizationally, I think it's true, man. And here I am insulting like management groups saying like, you're not paying attention. You're just focusing on names and brands. Like even when Luke Schen's name was coming up, like Leafs fans were even falling guilty to it. Like, oh, who knew we should get Luke Schenn? I'm like, are we fucking serious now? Because he's getting pumped now because he's having like an okay season. Like, give me a break. We had him the first years of his career when he was like at most fleet of foot, and we trashed him more than anyone. Oh, we want him now when he's older and washed up. Again, because he played for the Leafs at one point. Everybody knows his name and like thinks something of him. It's hilarious.
Yeah, the psyche and how people think about a lot of these players is so interesting. And I think it really does come down to how much exposure do these players get? Which teams do they play on? Do they play on a big market team and a lot of people know their name? Did they have a strong run in the Stanley Cup playoffs recently? All of these things factor in. And I think, honestly, the Panthers fell victim to this in this Ben Chiarot deal. And again, you could say we're being way too harsh because, again, I will say the Panthers are a very good team.
They might win the Stanley Cup.
They could win the Stanley Cup, but this is a team that hasn't won shit in the playoffs, hasn't won a playoff series since 1996, has not been battle tested recently, whose defense core is questionable right now, whose goaltending is also pretty questionable. So you could say that Florida is this fantastic team, but really, honestly, I kind of view them in the same way as I view the Leafs. Like the goaltending isn't great. There's holes on defense. The offenses are very explosive. I think honestly, if I was the Leafs, I'd want to play Florida in the first round of the playoffs instead of Tampa.
I wasn't sure if I would have the balls to say that out loud, but I was thinking the same thing. Like,
I don't want anything to do with Tampa.
Yeah, give me Florida. Give me Florida. Totally. I'll ask you this. So the way it stands now, I guess, would Florida play? I mean, let's say it ends up being Florida-Boston. How would you feel about that series?
I think Boston would be totally live to win that series. And the reason I say that is because I look at the Leafs and the teams that they have had trouble with in the playoffs recently. It's these defensive-minded teams that play tight, that get good goaltending, can score timely goals. That's not a very good matchup for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah,
it's almost like the Panthers and the Leafs need each other. Yeah. Like they need to play each other because one of them would finally win a playoff series and they have such similar styles. Whereas like you get the Leafs against Tampa, I think that would be terrible for the Leafs because Tampa, phenomenal defensive team, Andrei Vasilevsky, star power. Yeah. And then same thing with Boston. I would not want to play Boston if I was the Florida Panthers, as crazy as that might sound. So that's how I look at it right now.
This year's so weird because we talked about on the show before how like strong the East is at the top. Like we're talking about Boston as a wild card. Their pace has got to be like 110, 112 points. Like here you are, Florida. Let's say you win the President's Trophy with 120 points, and that's your reward. A team that can totally beat you in the first round. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. It sucks for them to have this good of a year this year, but I don't know, man. And this may come back and slap me in the face, but I just don't see it with Florida. I don't see them it all depends on who they play and of course how things go for them in terms of the bounces. But I'll say 100% without doubt that I would not give them a chance against the Lightning. Like something would have to happen. It really in their favor, whether it's an injury or a couple bounces for them to beat the Lightning over 7 games.
I've just seen this story play out so many times. You can be as explosive offensively as any team literally ever. But if you have trouble defending and your goaltending is not consistent, come playoff time, you are going to have issues. And we see it year after year. The same thing that happened with the Leafs last year. And listen, the Leafs got into a situation where they just couldn't score.
Right.
They didn't really have too many issues defending and playing, and goaltending last year. But look at Colorado. They were extremely explosive last season, got bounced in the second round. How many times did we see those Capitals teams with Ovechkin win the President's Trophy and then get bounced early? Even the Lightning, the year they had that 128-point season and got swept in the first round by Columbus. So the people who are just penciling in Florida, into the second round, third round Stanley Cup final, pump the brakes. Because the last time I checked, this team is nowhere near one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. And their goaltending is still pretty sketchy. So if that team gets into a playoff series with a team that can defend and stop the puck, they're going to have trouble.
Yeah. Like we mentioned Boston, I think the differences lie with, say, a team that's strong offensively versus defensively is that, you put up big numbers. And I'd like to see the actual like underlying totals for this, but how I would envision it is that, okay, if you looked at the teams that score a lot of goals. I would think, yeah, that team scores more than anyone else in totality, but I would think that there's going to be times throughout the season where it's erratic, where, okay, they score 5, but then the next game they score 2. And then for 3 straight games, they score at least 4, but then they score 3 over 2 games. Compared to a team that's strong defensively, I would guess that on the defensive side, it's just more steady.
Yeah, it's just maybe less volatile, right?
Exactly. Like I don't, for example, Florida, the number 1 scoring team in the league, can get shut out tomorrow. And nobody would be surprised. Ran to a hot goalie, whatever, things didn't go their way. 0 for 4 on the power play. They didn't score a goal. Whereas if you looked at, say, the best defensive team in the league, if we turn on SportsCenter and they got beat for 6 or 7, our eyebrows would raise and be like, how did that happen? What? Like it'd be confusing. So I'm not saying I know the numbers, but I'm going to guess that's the way they play out. And that's why what you're saying about the playoffs is so accurate.
Yeah. And listen, like you said, it could totally blow up in our face, and Florida could go to the Stanley Cup final, outscore every team, score 4 goals a game, and it's all sunshine and rainbows. But I'm just basing it on recent history. And you could even go back further if you want. Teams that are explosive offensively and aren't that good defensively tend to have issues in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So again, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out, Lepore. But let's look at some other Atlantic Division teams. Did you like any of the other moves made by Boston or the Lightning?
Well, the Lightning, I mean, that Hagel deal. Well, I'll tell you, I pulled over to pick something up. Looked at my phone after I pulled over, like everyone does, and I saw the tweet come through the alerts that deal had happened, and I just yelled "fuck" in a pretty loud voice. 2 reasons. Number 1, I was hoping the Leafs would claim Hagel, and it's been reported for a while now that Dubas is on the phone a lot about that deal. And number 2, he went to Tampa. Of course he did. Of course. A good young player on an amazing deal now plays for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they traded a lot to get him. And here I am saying I was hoping the Leafs would get him, but I don't think I would have traded what Tampa traded.
Yeah, that was a lot.
But like Stamkos came out and said, and I don't know if he was even actually referencing this deal. He said, we have this group here. We're not getting any younger. This is it. We got to do whatever it takes to win now. And I'm sure this will cause some buzz in the comments, but I do look around, especially the Atlantic, at teams who could potentially win the Stanley Cup this year. And I see the deals these teams have made recently or at the deadline. And in the case of, say, Tampa, yeah, they've won 2 straight cups, so they could take their foot off the gas, but they're not going to. You look at that core. The core is not young. Okay. Everything is going pretty well for them now in terms of their contracts and their structure. I completely understand going balls to the wall, go for it just about every year until this runs out. Okay. We've seen Pittsburgh do that in recent years. Like I said, Florida, they're the Florida Panthers. And someone pointed out what's going to happen to Florida next year is similar to what happened to Tampa last year, where they're going to lose a line. They have a full line of like UFA or an RFA. They're going to lose it. They're going to lose a line. So, okay, let's do what it takes after we just shot on their Chiarot deal. But let's do whatever it takes to get better right now. You look at Colorado and they pushed, but you look at it. Okay, they have Kadri this year. McKinnon is on that sweetheart deal for, I think, 1 more year after this. And then what's that going to go to 11, 12 million? So I understand the mindset of nothing matters. We got to go for it now because this is our chance. And people are going to get upset at this comment, but I don't think the Leafs are there. I really don't, because of their age and go on their cap friendly. This team is exactly the same next year. And they have their prospect pool that looks kind of nice right now. So, and their stars are locked up for at least a few more years in their primes, minus Tavares, but we can talk about that one. I just think the Leafs are not where some of these teams are. And like that Hagel deal, I like it for Tampa. Like back to the original question, I really do like it for Tampa. Like I said, I wouldn't have traded what they traded, but I get it. And it scares the shit out of me because I know Hagel's a great player and he made a team that's ridiculously good even better.
Yeah, my first reaction was, oh my God. Like, is Brandon Hagel Connor McDavid based on this package they gave up?
Yeah.
And obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit, but 2 first-round picks, Taylor Radish and Boris Kachuk for Brandon Hagel and a 4th round and 2 4th-round picks, I should say.
Okay.
And I totally get it. Like, obviously, if there's any team that's going to make that move, it is Tampa, coming off back-to-back Stanley Cups. They have their core in place. You know, some of those guys are starting to get up there in age, like Victor Hedman and Steven Stamkos. They obviously don't really care too much about the future. They want to continue winning with the group that they have. It was an overpay, in my opinion. My whole thing is just, I don't know how much a guy like Brandon Hagel is actually going to move the needle. And I get it. He's on a nice contract for the next couple of seasons. But when I look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, and you can talk to me about, you know, their third line that they had the last 2 years with Blake Coleman and Barclay Gaudreau. The reason that team won the Stanley Cup is because their star players went absolutely crazy in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos. I know he missed most of the 2020 playoffs, but Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky, when your star players play that well, you're going to have a good chance to win the Stanley Cup. The Leafs have an opportunity to do that. Florida has an opportunity to do that with their star power. Colorado, go down the list. That's what it comes down to. So again, I think it's a nice move for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's a nice young player on a good contract, but I'm just not sure it moves the needle too much. But for Tampa, they don't give a shit because they have all their stars in place and they're ready to go crazy again on another deep playoff run. So you can't really blame the Lightning for doing what they did, or you can't really shit on that deal because honestly, at this point, I think you have to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt for being arguably the smartest team in the NHL and probably the most well-run franchise. So I'm almost scared to rip any decision that team makes at this point.
Yeah. It's similar to, we'll continue in the division, the Hampus Lindholm deal in Boston. You look at Boston's lineup, their best players are in their prime or even maybe past their prime. I get them being like, fuck this, we're going for Lindholm. We don't care. And I don't think they necessarily overpaid. I'm just saying I completely understand the move. And again, the sad reality of this conference is that you have a lot of teams in this position where it's like this year is an opportunity. So we are really going to go for it. And we'll see how the playoffs play out. But that was another one to me where Tampa, like Colorado, Boston, these teams are just at that point where it's like, we got to do it now. We got to do it now. Like, as we said earlier, we think Florida went overboard claiming Ben Chiarot for what they paid. And I mean, I think our argument would be not necessarily that they didn't need to do that. Our argument would be that they should have done that same move for maybe somebody else for a different player or just rearrange something altogether. But there's going to be a lot of GMs with a lot of pressure after that first round. There's going to be some hot seats because a lot of moves were made of significance, and it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun.
And just a reminder, only one team wins the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Berkey was going off about that when he was being asked. He's like, he was asked about deals and he picked up, was it Ricard Raquel, who played for him in Anaheim, I believe. Yes. But he made the point saying all these teams are doing these crazy deals, moving assets to get better. The decision was wrong unless you're lifting the trophy on the last day. At the end of the day, I mean, you have to give yourself a shot. And like, I think we all know what he meant, but like teams just making this, man, Florida, 1 pick in the next 2 rounds over the next 3 seasons. That's tough. That's tough. That is really tough. So like, where's that team going to be in 4 or 5 years? And especially, and even if they're competitive next year, will they have that 1 second? Are they going to trade that? And who knows? And maybe they got some bodies that we're not thinking of. They can move for some assets. Because I even said too, again, back to the Leafs, because that's what we do. We traded that 3rd round pick in the Giordano deal, but we got a 3rd round pick back for Dermott. So, I mean, maybe Florida's sort of the same. I mean, I don't think they're going to be moving guys for firsts, but again, there's going to be a lot of GMs on a lot of hot seats come like even the end of the first round of the playoffs. Because I'll say it again, man. I've said it repeatedly on this show. There is not a single team in the Eastern Conference that you could tell me went out in the first round or won the Stanley Cup, and I'd be surprised.
Yeah, they're all good.
They're all good. They're all very
deep this year, man. Honestly, that's why all those teams made moves, because they all legitimately feel like they could make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, and I think to them too, it doesn't matter. Like I've always argued the whole thing of, oh, it was a waste, or you shouldn't have done that, or the season was a waste because you went out in the first round. There's a winner and there's everybody else. If anything, it's probably better because it gives you a longer summer to recover for the next season. And I know like Leafs fans don't want to hear that one, but no. Like again, one winner, man, one winner, which makes it so hard. But I looked at the standings the other day, and we've talked about this on the show. If I remember correctly, the gap between 8 and 9 in the East was, I want to say 13 points.
Yeah, it's still 13 points
and,
at the time of recording this.
And I think the Islanders have had three games in hand. And even if they go like 1-1-1 over those next three, they'd be like 16 points behind. So the 10th place team would be that far behind. And that's not to say those teams are brutal. It's just to say that there's 8 teams in the Eastern Conference having crazy seasons.
Yeah, the Eastern Conference is a gauntlet. And one thing I wanted to add on to that Hampus Lindholm deal for Boston, that was another situation. It kind of reminds me of this Giroux deal. Like, I like Hampus Lindholm. I think he's a good player. I would have been really happy if the Leafs acquired him. And you could say right now he's a better player than Mark Giordano. But when I look at the Boston Bruins, they're already one of the top 5 defensive teams in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
They're a great defensive team. They have good goaltending. How much is Hampus Lindholm going to move the needle for that team? When I look at Boston, the glaring hole to me is in their top 6. They obviously lost Krejci to the Czech Republic.
Apparently they tried to get him back.
I heard some rumors about that as well, trying to get Krejci back, and that would have been great for them. But I look at that team, I'm like, that's the team that needed Claude Giroux or a top 6 forward. As good as I think Hampus Lindholm is, I just don't know how much that moves the needle for Boston. It's like, and who knows? I just went on a rant saying how defense and goaltending is so important in the playoffs. So maybe I'm contradicting myself, but that's a team that I think was already sort of solidified defensively. And you could say they needed to upgrade their D-core as well, just looking at it on paper. But I think that's a team that needed some more goals and needed some more spark in their top 6. And they didn't do that. So again, you go through the entire Eastern Conference, they all made moves. Everyone's live, honestly, to get out of the East at this point. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Like, would you be surprised if like Boston got out of the East?
No, I would say, like, again, I wouldn't be like surprised or shocked, but for Boston to beat 3 of the teams in the East, I mean, again, not impossible, but that'd be like, that's a little surprising. That's like, even fair. I'd say maybe even the Rangers I'd put in that boat of like, they could do it, but I wouldn't bank on it. Like, how do you feel about, say, Washington or those teams I mentioned?
Yeah, like I think so. You basically have Tampa, Carolina, Florida, and the Leafs, and I guess Pittsburgh. And then you could say like the bottom tier is Boston, Washington, and who's the team I'm forgetting?
New York.
Boston, Washington, and the Rangers.
Yeah,
as you could say, that's kind of like the bottom tier, but none of those teams feel like an 8 seed.
Yeah,
like none of them feel like a team that's going to get blown out in the first round or anything like that, right?
We were just saying how Boston's tied with us in points now, so they're in that second group behind us, but maybe not too far into that second group. But it's a total joke. Like we're complimenting every team. Trust me, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, you could even say the Leafs are in that bottom tier. I still think the Leafs are closer to the top tier. And again, call me a Leafs homer, call Lepore a Leafs homer. But I do think when the Leafs are chugging on all cylinders and they actually get average goaltending, they're one of the elite teams in the league.
Yeah.
But Lepore, before we end this podcast, because we are getting up to the time here, any other teams from across the league that stood out to you on trade deadline day with some of the moves or lack of moves they made?
Yeah, I'm just, the things I always wonder about are what deals didn't happen. Like we talked about Giroux, and apparently he really wanted Florida. You mentioned Boston. Maybe Boston was interested. I mean, that would have been something. Giroux in a Bruins jersey. There were rumblings about Colorado. Imagine Colorado found a way to add Giroux. I mean,
that would have been crazy.
The Fleury deal, as much as I dump on Marc-Andre Fleury, I think it's a good move for Minnesota, and I think it's a good move for him. Because, yeah, Minnesota is like a pretty popular market, but it's not going to be this crazy big spotlight for him. And it's a great building. That's a great crowd. So I think he can get behind that. There's the connection to Guerin. They won a cup together. So he's really going to feel wanted and appreciated. So I do think that was a good move for them. And I always kind of root for Minnesota. So I'm hoping they do well. And I hope Fleury does well. But it was a space race, man. It was a friggin' arms race of who could load up, and we play in a cap league. So teams did the absolute best they could. And we're Leafs fans. And we mentioned how we're happy with what they pulled off. So this is it now. This is it. You just got to avoid all the things that you can't control that could affect you negatively from now on. Don't get hurt. That's it.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. You have to stay healthy at this time of year, because I brought it up, that Aaron Ekblad injury, that could change everything for the Florida Panthers. And that type of injury could happen to any of these top teams over the next month. And that would be devastating. So it's so important. You got to stay healthy. Before we wrap this up, Lepore, one loser of the trade deadline I want to bring up is the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, boom.
I mean, Brett Kulak and Derek Brassard, that's what this team did at the deadline.
Yeah, they got brass, Ottawa boy.
A team that is still fighting for a playoff spot, that as of recording this podcast is third in the Pacific Division. And the best they could do was pick up Brett Kulak and Derek Brassard.
So you would have made like a hard move if you were Edmonton?
I would have tried doing something more impactful than that.
Okay. Maybe they tried. I don't know.
Maybe it was picking up, again, Giordano only wanted to come to the Leafs, but going after either Giordano or Lindholm, or even picking up a better goaltender, I feel like Edmonton could have done a little bit more. And again, they're kind of in a tough situation with their cap as well.
Yeah.
But that's a team I think their fans are a little bit disappointed with how this trade deadline played out. But yeah, I mean, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl hop on their backs, all of Edmonton, because you're only going to go as far as those guys can drag you at this point.
I'm not sure if I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but something I've wondered about from the side of Oilers fans, because being an Oilers fan is a lot. Like, a lot goes on there, and they're the best player in the world. There's a lot to talk about. But how does it feel right now to be an Edmonton Oilers fan? And you drafted McDavid, you got Draisaitl, things were looking amazing, and things aren't terrible right now. It's just they're fighting for a playoff spot, and they are what they are. And then you look not too far away, and you see the Calgary Flames just chugging along, adding at the deadline. They have goaltending, defense. They can score. They play heavy. It seems like they have a team that's bought into a coach's system. It looks pretty freaking good for the Calgary Flames right now. So comment down below, Oilers fans, like how much you're sweating from all the chirps you're getting from Calgary Flames fans right now.
It is lit in Calgary. Like, that team is locked and loaded. The moves that they've made, starting off with Tyler Toffoli, getting Calle Yarncroke, that team is locked and loaded for a playoff run. And yeah, I mean, if you're an Oilers fan right now, I don't think you want that Battle of Alberta. I don't think you want anything to do with that Flames team in the playoffs.
I want it, Bruno.
We want it. Hockey fans want it, but I don't think Oilers fans want it.
I want to be able to watch my Leafs smash whoever they play in game one, and then the late game is Calgary Edmonton. I can just relax and enjoy the show. How's that for a night?
That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Lepore, anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap this thing up?
No, that's a lot. But considering the Giordano jersey, man, 55, 50, it's a risky one. It can blow up in your face. First round exit. He doesn't re-sign. What do you do with that one? So
it's tough.
It's tough. So re-sign, man. Win a cup and re-sign. That's all it takes. Come on.
That's the dream. Mark Giordano comes home And with fellow GTA guys, Jason Spezza, Wayne Simmons, Michael Bunting.
Yes.
All lift the Stanley Cup.
Amazing.
We're just going to speak it into existence.
Yeah, exactly. We've been trying for long enough.
We've tried everything at this point. So
why
please,
not?
Leafs, just once, one time. All right.
Once. We're not greedy.
Just one time. All right, everybody. That is going to do it for episode 56 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Once again, if you're a new listener and you enjoyed the show, it would be a big time help if you give us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it more than you would ever know if you just smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. And that's going to do it, everybody. We will see you next week. Have a good one, and go Leafs go.
Thanks, everyone.
Toma máquina, se yo, flow.